You'd think they'd clone more doctors or scientists, not me. They could have cloned Nelson Mandela.
After decades leading the struggle against apartheid, Mandela was freed from prison in 1990. He skyrocketed to become an international statesman and oversee South Africa's transition from apartheid into a multi-party democracy. But was the Mandela they released the same one who went in? Across the world, many people claim to remember Mandela's funeral in the 1980s. In South Africa, a popular conspiracy theory argues Mandela was swapped in jail by the apartheid government. A different man was released in 1990, and he betrayed the revolution. But this idea has less to do with South Africa's past, and more to do with its troubled present. This is the story of a modern South African conspiracy theory. In 2009, American Fiona Bruce knew very little about South Africa. Just what she had heard in the news.
Get off your cell phones. Pay attention.
And she was sure Nelson Mandela was dead. She vividly remembered his funeral in the 1980s, the newspaper headlines in America, the TV reports, and when she started to ask her friends, some of them also had a similar memory. Broom became famous for coining the term Mandela effect. Today, many people equate it with false memory syndrome. Sometimes, our memories play tricks on us. But Broom rejected this. She believed it was evidence of parallel universes. Her idea became popular amongst a small group of supernaturalists in America. And then, in the 2010s, it exploded across South Africa for quite different reasons.
He was a clone, the real Mandela died in prison, and then they made up a clone. Just some dumb shit.
The evidence was limited. Older pictures of Mandela contrasted with earlier ones. Had a mole disappeared? No, the picture was flipped. Did FaceApp technology show what the true Mandela should have looked like? The myth of the false Mandela crystallized. In 1985, Mandela was ended in prison by the apartheid government. They kept it a secret and released a lookalike called Gibson Makanda. This fake Mandela negotiated the end of apartheid. Because he was in the government's pay, he allowed the white minority to maintain control of land and businesses. Whilst Fiona Bruce's original audience were interested in magic and the supernatural, South African conspiracy theorists were trying to explain a very real problem. Black South Africans are politically emancipated. They can vote in elections, but they are not all economically liberated. They do not enjoy complete economic freedom. Many suffer and struggle to earn money and improve their lives. Perhaps the source of the problem was Mandela's negotiations to end apartheid in the 1990s. In the 1950s, the African National Congress created a Freedom Charter. Mandela helped to write it. 50,000 volunteers collected freedom demands from people in the townships and villages. The Freedom Charter promised free education to all, government redistribution of land, and nationalization of mines and banks. And yet, none of these things happened when apartheid ended. Did Mandela betray the revolution? The truth is, by the 1990s, the world had changed a lot from the 1950s. Socialist democracies had faded away. The Soviet Union had collapsed. In the West, there was one way of organizing things: neoliberal capitalism. Even in countries where the government controlled most of the economy, like Libya, Gaddafi had begun to sell off mines and land to private companies. The world was going in the opposite direction to the Freedom Charter. At the same time, Mandela was negotiating in a tense situation. Extreme groups on both sides had threatened violence. There was no compromise with political emancipation. But perhaps economic freedom could wait? It's possible Mandela believed black South Africans just needed a foot in the door. Then, in time, the multi-party democracy system would deliver economic liberation. Mandela's decisions in the 1990s make more sense in their historical context. It's unlikely that a fake Mandela was substituted from the real one. The conspiracy would have been difficult to carry out. His family would have to be tricked or bribed, for example. But the two Mandelas theory still tells us something interesting about South Africa.
Today, Nelson Mandela is the hero of foreigners and white people only. Don't believe what I'm telling you. Go speak to our kids, they tell you he's a sellout.
For a long time in South Africa, there has been what some analysts call a religion called Mandela.
Yeah, definitely, bro. He was like our god.
In the early years of the Rainbow Nation, Mandela became an icon of unity who joined up people across South Africa. But as the exciting early years fade, South Africans have had to get on with the bumpy process of building a nation together.
President Mandela is a human being like all of us. He's got his own shortcomings. His legacy and his contribution to the struggle will be a permanent subject for critique in the South African politics.
The two Mandelas myth is like an extreme form of this reassessment, but unlike Julius Malema's realistic approach, the conspiracy theory leads to a dead end.
Yeah, and they tried to link his number. It was 46664, right? If I'm not mistaken. Yeah, they tried to link the 666 to Illuminati and the higher powers and the New World Order.
Instead of making a plan, a person feels disempowered by shadowy forces that continue to undermine their freedom. And so, although this conspiracy theory tells us about problems in South Africa today, it doesn't offer any real solutions. A better direction can be found in the words of Malema.
I believe Mandela made his contribution to a particular extent, and it is up to us to take it from there and move forward.